Is this the very best property for a buy-to-let, or is this the perfect property for a buy-to-let? That's a question we got asked in today's question of the day from a client. Unfortunately, there's no very quick or simple answer. There's so many variables as to whether that buy-to-let or a buy-to-let property is going to be right for you or for me or for any property buyer that's kind of considering it, that there's not one thing that we can kind of say, just look at this or make sure that this kind of is in place and everything's good. So to maybe give some context further to that question, it was from a client that was looking to buy a property that they'd found on a property search portal. It was in Sheffield. It was a 3-bedroom property. It was, I think, on the market for about 150, rents about sort of 700, 725, and they were looking at it as a buy-to-let longer term kind of plan. Now, for some clients looking at that, they might not be interested because of the location or because of the rental yield, or even potentially because of the price. Maybe it's not in their kind of price range, or condition. These things matter when it comes to seeing and assessing if that buy-to-let property is going to be right for you. Now, specifically for this client, what they also wanted was a property that's going to be a good family home for them if they ever did need to move back to the area. So they have this extra dynamic at play that really impacts what decision they're going to make on their particular property. So it's very difficult for any one person to say that that's going to be the perfect buy-to-let, or any property is going to be the perfect buy-to-let. So the easiest way that we would say to kind of assess it is to consider the fundamentals. And there's a link that I'll put kind of below this video, which we have a checklist on our site, which covers about 7 different categories. And in those categories, it covers things like tenant profile, rental yield, exit strategy. These are the things that you need to consider if you're wanting to maybe assess one particular property compared to another, to understand if it's going to be the right buy-to-let property or right opportunity for you to move forward with or add to your portfolio. Now, once you have those key criteria and those key categories that are relevant to you for your plans and your aims, the next stage is trying to understand what are the specific kind of nuances of each of those. So let's take rental yield, for example. Personally, for our portfolio, we try and target properties around 7% plus gross rental yield for buy-to-lets. Other investors might be looking for higher, others might be happy with lower if it's in a perfect kind of location. But if you don't know what that variable is, just saying we're going to be focusing on kind of rental yield as our kind of headline criteria, when you're assessing deals, you have nothing as a barometer to kind of compare like for like, or to try and see if it's the right type of property. And then you also maybe, I would say, consider other secondary kind of metrics, things like tenant profile. So it might be the great or the right rental yield, but is it the right tenant profile for you? Because the wrong tenant profile with a good rental yield is going to be a very difficult property to kind of manage and maintain and want to own for a particular long period of time if that's what your ambition is. So trying to understand these metrics, trying to understand what your particular personal criteria is for your buy-to-let property is very important. I don't think there's anybody out there that's going to be able to say that this or any property is the right or the perfect buy-to-let property for you. But once you have that criteria, create some rules of thumb, create some guidelines around it. If it's yield, what sort of yields do you want? If it's exit strategy, how quick might you need or want to sell that property in the future, and what sort of time frame? If it's tenant profile, what's your perfect tenant profile? Those sorts of things. And then it makes it much easier when you're assessing your next property opportunity. Hope that helps. All the best. Bye.